Okay, well, let's do it. Okay.
Welcome to the GALIX Inaugural Congress 2021. This is a global and virtual Congress, so we have attendees from Hawaii to US East Coast, West Coast, and Canada to Europe and Japan, hosted by GALIX and in collaboration with NASA, SRI, IMA, NSS, and SSPI. The GALIX Congress has a long list of 21 participant organizations, which is written in the program and which you can view on the galix.net website. A global team of visionary space professionals called GALIX are exploring creative and diverse ways to engage governmental agencies, scientific institutions, universities, commercial ventures, and international organizations in strategies to promote world collaboration in space. GALIX addresses very important space industry topics, including space law and ethics, space finance, space treaties and protocol, space business and economy, space regulation, space safety, collection, removal, and reuse of space debris, space traffic management, planetary defense systems to defend against radiation, violent solar storms, and asteroid and comet strikes, space to Earth, meaning leveraging space mining and innovative technology to ensure a more sustainable life on Earth, and space education to inspire the next generation of space leaders, space scientists and engineers, space visionaries and entrepreneurs. We now officially open the GALIX Inaugural Congress 2021.
Okay, so good evening or good afternoon or good morning for some. I'm Jean-Jacques Tortora, and I will have the pleasure and the honor to chair this first session on the future of off-world settlements, where we will discuss the technical, operational, regulatory, safety, and environmental challenges ahead of us. More specifically, the point of the GALIX Congress is to favor the expansion of international collaboration in space. And it is clear that more than in any other area of space activities, there can be no in-space habitats, no proper management of exploration sites without extensive agreement on a number of so-called soft issues that reach way beyond simple technical standards and operations. So during this panel, we will discuss the conditions for a peaceful and viable approach to permanent manned settlements in space. And today there are many divergent and potentially conflicting goals associated with any future in space habitats, including such options as private space stations. Actually, there is a need for progress in two different ways or perspectives. The first one is obviously to ensure a closer global cooperation and clearer international agreements to include the major or the key actors that are active in these matters. This means among nations, among space agencies, among private commercial interests with spacecraft, space stations, etc. The second one is to favor a broad interdisciplinary cooperation among entities with different expertise and goals that are all necessary to ensure the success of such endeavors. This would involve closer cooperation and effective collaboration between and among, on one hand, the entities with the skills to concretely implement space settlements. I mean, the technology or hardware developers, the financial investors, for instance. And on the other hand, those whose skill sets involve what might be called protective or jurisdictional role. These will be the people with the skills to develop the safety standards and the life support systems, the regulatory, legal, and policy framework, those supporting the environmental and sustainability concerns, those who deal with the risk management, like space insurance companies, as well as the educators and training personnel. However, each of these individuals and their organization might tend to define their objectives in different ways. And this is precisely the issue that I would like to address within the next hour with you. And for this, I have the privilege to have with me a prestigious panel composed of Madhu Thangavelu, who is Associate Professor at the University of Southern California, and officer of the Moon Village Association. Second, we'll have Alicia Woodley, who is Chief Counsel for Axiom Space, that is partnering with NASA to deploy a private space station. Third, we'll have Adriano Autino, President of the Space Renaissance International, that will have its own Congress in June 2021. And last but not least, we have Michelle Hanlon, who is founder of For All Moonkind and permanent observer at COPIOS and vice president of the National Space Society. So, but I would like to start maybe with Madhu Thangavelu. So the Moon Village Association has given a good deal of thoughts with regards to the planning and engineering of lunar settlements on an integrating planning basis. So is there a comparable level of planning and sophistication of thought with regard to environmental protection, policy, and regulatory framework that should be applied? I mean, in particular, regarding the safety standards and commonality of standards among space agencies or private commercial partners, space insurance provisions, and other softer aspects of a moon village. So, Madhu, please.
Thank you, Jean-Jacques, and good morning to all of you from Southern California. My name is Madhu Thangavelu, and I am the North American coordinator for the Moon Village Association. I'm happy to be in this August gathering of exceptionally well-known people. And I would like to also tell you that Asterix is special to me, so GALIX is even more special to me. With that, let me share the screen, please. So what is the Moon Village Association? It was created in June of 2017 to foster the implementation of the Moon Village concept. MVA is a member of the IAF and an observer in the United Nations COPIOS. A forum to advance the development of Moon Village involves industry, government, space agencies, international organizations, NGOs, and the public. And it's seen as a catalyst for stimulating a cycle of investments for the development of a lunar economy. Right now, there are over 500 individuals involved, and they are from over 60 countries. 28 institutional members from 10 countries are involved right now, and we are growing. Now, I am part of the architecture case study group, and as Jean-Jacques mentioned, MVA has a reference architecture for building a lunar base infrastructure. In fact, if you look at the left corner here, you'll see we are looking at all the region between Earth orbit all the way to the lunar surface. And in particular, zone 1 and 2, which look at the peak of eternal light on the lunar south polar region, and also a south polar permanently shadowed region area that we are looking to have a settlement. Again, this is a reference study meant for 2045. We have several working groups and projects in the running right now. They include lunar commerce and economics, outreach, education, and Women on the Moon project. There is a cultural considerations project. A first payload has already been assigned, and we are working towards implementation of the first payload. A coordination and cooperation group, as Jean-Jacques mentioned, an architecture concepts group, which I belong to, and finally, and importantly, a participation of emerging space countries called PECs. Well, the problem is that, as Jacques again mentioned, that there are many players in the game now, and we want to reduce the potential international tension due to uncoordinated missions going to the moon in close by locations. And so we have engaged a new group of experts called the Global Group of Experts on Sustainable Lunar Activities. The idea is to establish a common level playing field on the lunar activities for defining common practices on how to behave in lunar missions, clarify and implement details for lunar missions, interoperability, debris mitigation, and safety zone, and so on. Creation of confidence building and fostering peaceful cooperation is part of the plan. And to keep the public informed is important. How to do it? So we have the Global Expert Group. We call it GEGSLA. It just started. It's a multi-stakeholder group. Space agencies are involved, industries are involved, academia, civil society, and the public. The first meeting happened on February the 25th, and we hope to keep monthly meetings going. We are growing. The GEGSLA is growing. Right now, we have 36 members from 12 space agencies, 10 from the industry, 8 from academia, and 6 from civil society. There were more than 120 observers in our first meeting, and more than 40 countries were represented. We are still calling open for observers and sponsors to the MVA site. The outcome will go to UN CUPOS via the MVA with a draft at the end of 2021 and a final by 2022. And the main document, again, are about common practices for sustainable activities on the moon, interoperability, debris mitigation, and safety zone definition are our prime and up top agenda. Anyhow, please check the progress on the very active Moon Village Association site as we engage and cheer on the global community to return to our moon with global goodwill and cooperation for all humanity. Thank you. Thank you, Jean-Jacques.
No, thank you, Madhu. Thank you very much for your very, very clear and concise presentation. Quite useful to know more about the Moon Village Association.
Please go on the website. Yes, thank you.
And I look forward to further exchanging with you later on. But before that, I would like now to turn to Alicia, Alicia Woodley. So you are representing today Axiom, which is a venture that is starting off as a sort of private-public partnership. So your objective is to send modules to the International Space Station that will be assembled and then deployed as a private space station. Such initiative raises a number of questions regarding the legal status of a private space station as a US incorporated company, for instance. This might include its status as being under the flag or the US or not, once independently deployed in orbit. So what are your views on this?
Thank you so much to the esteemed moderator and to the panelists. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Alicia Woodley. I'm Chief Counsel and Director of Corporate Operations at Axiom Space, headquartered in Houston, Texas. Thank you, Jean-Jacques. Axiom Space, as some of you may know, was founded by Kamal Ghaffarian and Michael Suffredini, who are longstanding leaders of the industry, including Mr. Suffredini's prior experience managing the assembly of the International Space Station and the program for multiple decades, and together now fostering the transition over to commercial space. Our team is composed of a number of individuals who have participated in a broad array of NASA efforts, and so we do have a longstanding legacy of work with NASA, but from there we've expanded our collaborations to not only the international partners who participate in the International Space Station activities, but beyond. And as such, we see our mission as serving both world governments and commercial entities, and indeed the entire global populace. So this really is part of a shift and what we view as a revolution that's no less profound than the Industrial Revolution or the digital revolution. The goal of our organization, beyond attaching our modules in the Axiom Station to Node 2 Forward of the ISS, is really to open up new platforms and means for individuals and entities to participate in low Earth orbit. So that means the low Earth orbit economy, it means government collaborations, it means research, manufacturing, and supporting many of the efforts that go and extend beyond low Earth orbit itself. And so, yes, while this is indeed a Houston-based US corporation, we view our mandate as much broader. And to that end, just a few quick points. So as mentioned, we're dedicated to the expansion of access and participation in the LEO economy and to supporting the Scientific and Human Development Forum that we're facilitating. And we invite you all to visit us at our website at axiomspace.com to learn more. There's a lot more that you may be interested in, whether it's related to our missions, the rollout of our modules, which will be constructed in a progressive modular format until deorbit of ISS, at which point the Axiom Station will remain on orbit and continue to grow and expand, or any other of the many endeavors that we are engaging in. So we'd love for you to join us and to see how you can become involved. Ahead, however, of the launch of the modules themselves, some of you may have seen in the news recently that we were thrilled to announce the crew of AX-1. AX-1 is history's first ever private crew to go to the International Space Station. This is a full complement of crew, including Commander Michael Lopez Alegria. Some of you may be familiar with Commander Alegria from his work at NASA. and his experience and exemplary record, particularly related to EVAs and service and assembly of the ISS, as well our pilot Larry Connor, Eitan Stibbe, and Mark Pathy. And as you can see, this really does represent an international contingent of participants, which is part of our goal, whether it's for our precursor missions, such as the mission to the ISS coming up in 2022, or throughout the expansion of the other platforms that we're working to build. As a number of you will likely reference during today's conversation, there are many high-level considerations that we come across in our day-to-day work, and as we think about the impact that each of us may have on the path of development for the industry. And those range from jurisdiction, on-orbit governance, of course, astronaut rescue for those of us who are dealing with individuals, planetary mining, research, and the role of world governments. From Axiom's position, I know that you mentioned that there are nuances of how each of us on the panel may define or focus or orient our roles for this work, and that is indeed the case. At Axiom, we are really extremely focused on following the stepping stones as we've laid them out. And part of this process for us is to focus on the role that commercial entities can most critically play right now. So the ways in which we can amplify the impact and expand access. And this means both tangibly, so literal access to, for example, the individuals who you saw before to ISS or to low Earth orbit, or to projects or research or other efforts to be conducted in microgravity. But beyond that, there are also a lot of efforts underway that focus on the expansion of the space infrastructure. And that includes the investment and development of new technologies. So rather than viewing other private entities and particularly startups as competitors, we view them as part of the community that we're here to serve. Our goal is to bring forward, to support, and to nurture as many of those entities as possible, because we do believe that it will take an extremely rich, well-nourished, growing and thriving population of such organizations and a real diversity of them to accomplish the goals that we all have for the coming decades. And so our role in supporting this really is to ensure that we are serving as a stepping stone and not a stumbling block to that development. And I think that summarizes our international, global, and perspective, indeed, beyond planet Earth.
Well, thank you, Alicia. Quite enlightening presentation as well. And I would have plenty of questions regarding this, I would say, new and quite great groundbreaking initiative of the private sector towards quite, I would say, reachable or outreach objective of putting up a permanent settlement in space. But we'll come back to that later. Before that, I would like now to turn to Adriano Autino. So you are representing today the Space Renaissance International Organization that has championed the concept of private commercial space enterprise and advocated for their role in being able to create permanent space settlements. In order to achieve the objective to ensure the ability of humans to have another place to sustain intelligent life beyond Earth for the longer term, what types of collaborative arrangements will need to be established to allow private commercial entities such as Axiom, SpaceX, or Moon Express, or other commercial entities from around the world to thrive with appropriate regulatory controls to make sure that they are safe, compatible with the international space agreements, or with public national space agency initiatives. So, Adriano, the floor is yours.
So thank you very much for having me here. It's a great honor and a pleasure for me to work with you and with Joe Pelton that I learned to know since some months for our collaboration between GALIX and SRI. So I try to go flying on my slides because I know the time is very short. However, my presentation is made of two parts. The first one is the global civilization risk during next 10 years. And the second one is the greatest opportunity, expanding civilization into outer space. So as I said, I will fly, and if someone will be interested during the conversation, we can come back to some slides and go deeper in the concepts. However, our civilization is facing a multiple crises that we call it the closed world philosophy crisis. So 8 billion humans cannot make without a planet B, or maybe the equivalent of several planets B, even if we will save planet A. More, we cannot save planet A without achieving planet B. So different crises, I say, the Earth resources are not enough to allow the development of the 8 billion humans. We need more and more energy, and the internet society will need more energy with respect to the previous social models. Pollution and climate change. The economy is in permanent crisis since 50 years at least. Migration, unemployment, social conflicts, and resource wars. So pandemics now, such as COVID-19, are threatening our human nature. Socializing, working together, traveling, to love and have children. So we are facing a possible cultural decay in the closed world. That means the decrease of freedom, democracy, and ethics. And the real risk is a civilization implosion. So we are facing a space age or a new Stone Age. Nikolai Kardashev classified civilizations according to energy harvesting capacity. Type 1, using our own planet energy. Type 2, using our own solar system energy. Type 3, using our galaxy energy. Bob Zabrin, that's the president and founder of the Mars Society, added resources as evaluation criteria. Carl Sagan added information. And we at SRI in our Congress next June will discuss the addition of a fourth criteria, social inclusion. What we mean that a type 1 civilization using only the planet energy and resources cannot be fully inclusive. Only evoluting to a type 2 civilization, we can assure all of our citizens and growing the possibility to realize a feasible utopia, the highest Maslow's objective available for everybody. So what we have, our allied is the new space sector, new space industry and market. There are several differences between the old space paradigm and the new space paradigm. The most important are that we are moving from the astronautical space exploration made by military trained explorers to civilian space passengers and settlers, and from spendable rockets that dominated the market for 50 years to reusable rockets, and the very, very high speed development of Starship by SpaceX is the key indicator, the measurement of this process. So there are several other criteria that we can use to differentiate old space and new space. We can go deeper later, maybe. So what we need to develop the civilian space development, we need to give more importance, more priority to some enabling technologies to allow civilians to work and live in space. Alicia, in the previous presentation, was talking about adding modules to the ISS in order to allow individuals and companies to start working in low orbit. And for sure, to do that, we will need to have artificial gravity, finally, to start after so many years experimenting zero gravity and low gravity, to start experimenting artificial gravity that will allow people to stay longer than 6 months in space, and protection against radiation, cosmic radiation, that are not that terrible until we stay inside the Van Allen belt. But if we go outside it, on the moon and behind, it will become more important and dangerous for human health. As well, we need green environments in the habitats. And we need, of course, low-cost, safe and comfortable vehicles with low acceleration that will allow people to take a space shuttle as it was a normal airliner. So to do all of that, we need collaboration, international collaboration. That's why GALIX is quite to the point from this point of view, because we need to understand the real priority if we want to start civilian space development, and to be able to work together to boost this enhancement of technologies. So last but not least, a look on the economy. Morgan Stanley recently shared an estimate of the 2040 space economy. They say it will be 1 trillion, but if you look at this pie, only 5% or less than 5% is what they called other, including the, let's say, civilian space activities. The rest, 95%, is dedicated to the internet, to TV broadcast, to ground equipments, and to government programs. So this foreseeing for 2040 is made on the basis of the old space paradigm, as if we are not having SpaceX developing the Starship, and if we are not having a Moon Village project, if we are not having any, I don't know, asteroid mining and so on. So what we dare to say is that should the 2040 space economy be only 1 trillion, we would not have saved the global economy. So probably the global economy will collapse before 2030 if we will not have a true civilian space development. If we will have a true civilian space development, we could have space economy in 2040 worth of maybe $3 trillion or more. So don't look at these figures. These are not accurate. We didn't make calculations and foreseeings and so on. It's just to give a visual idea of what could be our global economy in 2030 if we will have cislunar industry based on helium-3, oxygen, water, etc., asteroid mining, space tourism, cislunar internet, Earth orbital industry, debris recovering, satellites assembly and maintenance, and so on, Earth orbital intercontinental transport, Earth internet, and these are all the old segments that will grow, however, following the new space segments. If we will not have the new space segments, even these segments will be dead. So this is a quite optimistic foreseeing, and in the awareness that we have a choice to be made during next 10 years. That is what Klafterike said, the extraterrestrial imperative to evolve or go the civilization scrap. So this is the alternative, and we will have to make this choice during the next 10 years. So this is why we at SRI are so urgent, and we are trying to make people aware of this urgency and of this necessity to take the good decision. So thank you very much for your attention. I recommend everybody to join our Congress that will take place in June, end of June, from 26 to 30. There is a call for paper, and everybody are warmly invited to take part. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adriano, and we will be there for sure. Much to say and much to further discuss. Now I'd like to turn to our next speaker, who is Michel Hanlon. So Michel, you as a creator of For All Moonkind, you have made great inroads for obtaining recognition of historical sites on the moon. And the question is whether there can be additional global collaborative approach to go beyond this to provide further environmental protection. Will it be possible to create, for instance, via the Artemis Accords or other legal or regulatory mechanisms, ways to protect valuable natural resources of the moon or protect various sites or settlement areas from pollution? So what, according to you, what is the best way forward?
So thank you so much. And I just want to take a step back and look at this panel and think about, I want everybody to realize what an amazing time we live in, right? We're here talking about putting communities on orbit, putting communities on the moon, collaborating on Earth to create a future. And everybody I've met in space has, comes to, I have dear old friends here like Madhu, Joe Pelton, new friends, Jean-Jacques, Adriano, and Alicia. I mean, I just every now and then I just want to take a step back and sort of hug myself, because this is like a dream come true, right? I mean, we are the people who are going to make humans a spacefaring species, and I'm just really proud of that. I don't have any slides, but I do have I'm sharing in the chat a link to our For All Moonkind Moon Registry. So I invite you, while I'm speaking, to take a little walk through the history of the moon and see all the wonderful things that humans have already done there. So you asked me, Jean-Jacques, what can we do? So what we can do is remember that we have had an incredible history as a human species. We have proven to be curious, we've proven to be migratory, and we've proven to be exploratory. We're going into space, we're going back to the moon. What we've learned from our history, though, is that we have to be responsible as we explore, right? We can no longer take this attitude of, hey, let's just do it, let's get there, and who cares about the consequences? Because we understand what it means that we need to be sustainable, that we need to explore sustainably in order to be successful. And we're learning that. So at For All Moonkind, we're really proud. In the 3 years that we've been in existence, we have passed the One Small Step Act in the United States, which is the first nation to understand, oh, there is something out there in space. There are sites in space that should be considered universal heritage sites. It's the first recognition by any nation. It's not the United States saying we own these sites and they need to be protected. It's a recognition that there's something special. That was followed on in the Artemis Accords, Section 9, which says that, again, we need to recognize that there are sites on the moon that are of universal historic value to humanity, not to the United States, not to Russia, not to China, to humanity. And 9 countries have signed on to the Artemis Accords and agreed to that general premise that there are things that are worth protecting. Similarly, we see responsibility coming out of the COPUOS, right? We just passed the long-term sustainability guidelines by consensus. And while they look more to orbital operations, that kind of collaboration and cooperation is the kind of movement we need to see going on to the moon and other celestial bodies. So these are small steps, right? And where is our giant leap? Well, of course, For All Moonkind, we believe our giant leap comes with preservation, starts with preservation. 193 nations on Earth have ratified the World Heritage Convention. Every single nation on Earth recognizes that heritage is about kinship, that heritage is universal. We don't protect these footprints in Laetoli because they're in Tanzania, because they're Tanzanian, because they're African. We protect them because they recognize our common human history. And so we need to take that common sense of collaboration and bring that to the moon with us. And it starts with preservation of our historic sites. We recognize Luna 2 and Luna 9, Chang'e 5, Apollo 11, but it moves on beyond just historic sites because preservation is about responsibility to our future. And that isn't just about history, it's about protecting our resources for the future, whether they are resources that we are going to use to get from the moon to farther places, deeper space, or whether they're sites that we want to protect because they're beautiful. We're going to need to think about this and develop responsibly. When we saw Madhu's slides and we saw, there are a lot of resources on the moon, but they're all collected in the same place. So we need to think responsibly and work together to utilize those resources in a way that we don't deplete them immediately for silly reasons, and that we are able to continue to use them, and that our progeny are continuously able to benefit from them. And I know that there are a lot of people asking questions, and so I will end my presentation there. But again, for our Moonkind Moon Registry, the link is in the chat, and I invite you to go and walk through history. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And I think that these conclude a great set of presentations by all our panelists. And in the meantime, we have received a number of quite interesting questions from the audience. And maybe if you allow now, if you agree, I would like maybe to consider them. So the first one is about the gaps in legal regulatory frameworks governing operations and activities for such settlements. So would it be in LEO, which is actually the focus of the question, so addressed primarily to Alicia, or for further on down the way, permanent settlement on the moon or elsewhere. So maybe I will start with you, Alicia. According to you, what are the current gaps in our legal framework?
Sure, and I will be brief, as I know a number of my colleagues have a significant commentary on this from a historic, regulatory, and beyond perspectives. But to start, there is a really strong, as we all know, historical basis for grounding the work that remains to be done. So of course, we have the 1968 Rescue Agreement, the 72 Liability Convention, registration, the Moon Treaty. For Axiom, extremely relevant and really driving a lot of our structure of contractual mechanisms is the 1998 ISS Agreement. I think where we find the greatest challenges are in the implementation. The devil is in the details, because the actual individual contracts governing the work that we do come down to the creation of text that is actually itself entirely new. So moving from the underlying agreements that exist, for example, between nations, in the case of the ISS, between the US government, NASA, and the international partners, so ESA, Japan, Canada, Russia, there is still quite a large chasm to get to the final T's and C's, the final agreement on which FAR flow down clauses will ultimately be accepted, the orders that implement the overarching agreements. And so there are, if you actually keep your eyes peeled, you'll see a number of announcements coming from Axiom in the coming days related to new contractual mechanisms that we've been working over the last several years to develop. But this has been quite a process, because anytime you're transitioning from a regulatory body of work to the actual implementation on a commercial basis, the existence of the specific precedents is not there. So there is quite a bit of hammering through from the underlying principles to the commercial implementation. And this is one of the reasons that, I emphasize this concept of constantly reminding ourselves that we owe it to our grandchildren to ensure that our activities are those of a stepping stone and not a stumbling block. So the considerations of safety, environmental issues, always must be taken into account, because the ramifications of what we put in these documents will be relied on as the initial precedent for generations to come. But at the same time, we feel a great sense of urgency to move quickly. And I appreciate the commentary from our colleague Adriano, and I can't agree with him more regarding the prescience of the need to expand the economic opportunities in this area. And for this, I would encourage VCs, private equity groups, angel investors, and others to look at the model of green investment, environmentally conscious investment. So we still have not seen, given the newness and the sense of risk inherent in space, the kind of transition that we have witnessed, where more mainstream sources of funding are willing now to either participate in portfolios or other mechanisms that allow them to support environmental investment. And really, once I think the public embraces and understands how urgent this matter it is, how it both ties to those environmental concerns and beyond, as we come to understand this as a humanitarian, as a social responsibility, as a matter of ensuring the welfare of our children and future generations, that transition alone can help to facilitate sustenance for the expansion of the economy that will then ultimately allow us all to reap the rewards.
We'll come to economy a bit later. The question was really related to legal and regulatory framework. Now I would like to turn to Madhu and ask him basically the same question. Is it anyway different when we consider a settlement on the lunar surface?
Okay, my understanding of the law and legal matters, Jean-Jacques, is because of my association with people like Michel Hanlon. And when I see the way she writes with lines with numbers on the side, I understand it's a legal document. So I agree with all the things that Alicia and Adriano mentioned in general. And from a engineering and a architectural viewpoint, we can look at precedents to see what went wrong when we went into orbit. Let's take a look at the International Space Station, or the Mir, or the Skylab before. Every one of them had problems. And as we get more complex into the building activities, we are sure to face more what we would call normal accidents. And if you look at the International Space Station, there are several tools used by the astronauts that are floating around or being lost into the orbital regime. And some of these newer ideas, we expect them to be even more complex. So we want to be thinking about the environment in a very, very serious way on the moon and in orbit. And I've been thinking about the moon. The saving grace on the moon is gravity. And if something goes wrong, the moon will pull it back to the surface. In orbit, that's not the case. So we need to be particularly careful in orbital arrangements. There is this notion that simulating gravity is gravity. Nothing could be wrong. Einstein used the trick to say that if you accelerate at G, you are G, and you'll not know a difference. Not in reality, it's very different from a theoretical physical concept. If things go wrong in orbit, you mess up entire regimes. On the moon, we are a little bit safer. But when I was working in the industry, they told me even if things go wrong on the moon, on the surface, it can still mess up a lot of things for other people. And that is why in the expert group, one of the first things all of them asked, I think there were 60 or 70 people there, they were all asking, what will you do when your friend flies over your precious exposed asset on the moon? So you need to plan these things very, very carefully. And I'm so glad that we are in this group right now, speaking about exactly the same thing. Environmental impact is right and center to any kind of activity that we propose outside of planet Earth. One more time, gravity is different from centrifugal force. So anybody planning anything in orbit have to realize that very much. That's my thinking, Jean-Jacques.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Madhu. So, Michel, actually, I have the feeling that Madhu has been addressing this question under your control. Maybe to correct.
Well, I don't think Madhu is under anybody's control ever. So, no, of course, I mean, the law is informed by the technology, right? And I think, I'm very jealous of Alicia and what she's doing, because she really is taking, for the very first time, looking at human relationships in space, which we haven't done at all ever, right? Because all of our treaties are at the state level. And so, it's funny because in class, we just looked at the intergovernmental agreement and talked about what we would take from the IGA and put into a contract with tourists. But certainly, let's talk about the gaps in the law. What is the biggest gap? This understanding of what does due regard mean, right? Article 9 of the Outer Space Treaty is what we have all relied on to protect our assets in space, whether on orbit or on other celestial bodies, that other states will have due regard for our activities. And so that is what we need to struggle with in terms of, that is really the biggest legal gap, because we have this freedom of exploration and use that is the underlying factor of everything we do in space. And it is only amended by this concept of due regard. So as we move forward, we need to sort of think about that. And we talked about deconfliction of activities. We've talked about building an economy while doing that deconfliction. We've talked about the many resources that are in one place. We've talked about manufacturing in space, space tourism. All of these things are amazing and really great. And we need regulation to help us deconflict them. And so Alicia's talking about bringing investors in, the green investors. We need to give those investors some concrete understanding. We don't want, when something goes wrong in space, we don't want to pay people like me to litigate what due regard means. We want to have some sort of baseline understanding of what that means, so that companies like Axiom can take that money and spend it on building and not on litigating. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michel. So now I would like maybe to address another question, and that this one will be certainly addressed by Adriano. It's about economy. A lot of questions are dealing with the space economy, and actually the first one is about how and when we could consider having a fully sustainable space economy to support, I would say, the models of creation of permanent settlement. And a lot are about the change and the revolution which is currently taking place with the dramatic decrease of access to space, with a number of initiatives like the ones put forward by SpaceX, for instance, but not only. In which way is it going to affect our vision or the development of the space economy, and what avenues would you see for the development of international cooperation in order to take advantage, ideally, of this opportunity. Adriano.
Thanks. You gave me a lot of questions. I will try to give a couple of answers that maybe will address some of your questions. I don't know in which proportion. However, the first thing is that, of course, I don't have the crystal ball to see what it will be, the space economy. Yes, I made that slide saying 3.5 trillion in 2040, but this is just a wish. No, it's not a real calculation. However, what I can say is that from our study that we make at Space Renaissance, our two World Congress that we had in 2011 and 2016. And now the work we are doing for the thesis of this incoming Congress in June, we have an idea of what we should do to help, to support that development of a real civilian expansion in space. And I think the first lesson we have to take is from Elon Musk, because he is implementing a quite different methodology with respect to what we always have seen with the space agencies and so on. He is just adopting a pragmatical methodology. And the really different thing is that he has a goal that is making humanity a spacefaring species. That evidently space agency didn't have clear this vision, this goal. However, okay, everyone made something useful, however, no? So I make an example. Elon Musk didn't make anything really new, because he is making his rockets putting many engines together. This same thing was Russians were trying to do that in 70s, controlling more engines altogether, but it was not possible because in 70s there was not a computer science enough to make a concurrent control, real-time control of 20, 30 engines altogether. Now we have it. So it is not disruptive, the fact that we have 27 engines together for the Falcon Heavy. The disruptive thing is that now we have the computers that can do it. And Elon Musk, because his objective is to do this thing as soon as possible, then he decided to use what we have in a better way. This is an important lesson that we have to take. And having said that, we have to recognize that new space, not only Elon, but also Jeff Bezos and Virgin Galactic and a lot of other people, including Bigelow, poor guy that now is bankrupt, but however, he made important things with inflatable models and all these kinds of things. However, they are bringing a disruptive contribute to the space civilization expansion. So we have to recognize this and to try to make a better agenda, feasible agenda, reasonable agenda for developing the space, the civilian space. I remember a discussion I had with Rioso a few months ago, because he said that I was too optimistic for foreseeing for 2050 to have cislunar on-air cities and all these kind of things. Yes, maybe I am a bit optimistic. However, we have to try to reason with the new space paradigm, not with the old one. This is the first thing. Second thing, space debris. Alicia came up again with very wise notations about the environmental issues and concern, etc. So thinking about industrializing Earth orbit and the cislunar space immediately, we have to think about environment of the interface between Earth and the cosmos. And we already throw an incredible amount that we are keeping on throwing up of iron boxes that are unmanned and uncontrolled. yes, now we have devices on board the satellites that at the end of the life cycle will draw them to burn in the atmosphere. However, we have to think that all of these tons, thousands of tons of material that we have in orbit costed money to put them up, costed money to develop, to design, etc. And now all what we are thinking that we can do is to make them burn in the atmosphere. No, we have to think about reusing these materials to build the orbital infrastructure. So I think this will be the first industrial activity. Maybe not the first. We have at least two activities that we can do in orbit. One is recovering the debris, processing, getting powders for 3D printing, and build things in space with orbital workshops. This is one thing. And the other thing is to make assembly of the satellites in orbit. That will lower the cost, will lower everything, because the satellites will need less automated devices in order to deploy antennas and all these kind of things. And these things are very expensive, because any mechanical automation that you put on board a rocket, you have to think about vibration of the launch. Therefore, it will be very much expensive. If you avoid this, satellite will cost less. And orbital workshops can also, okay, I will stop now, but these were the two things that I wanted to say that are things that can accelerate the development of a true space economy.
Yeah, thank you, Adriano. I'm very sorry, but we have reached the end of our time slots, and we need now to conclude our panel on this. Maybe I would like to ask you a question that I would like you to reply with just one single word. How should we call these off-world activities? I offer you three options. The first one is settlements, colonies, or bases. What would be your choice? Starting with the...
For sure, settlements is the first choice. But we also had a discussion in the Space Renaissance Committee, right, maybe 1 month ago about this point, because in our thesis, we want to make proper words, proper terms. And Howard Bloom suggested to talk about gardens. That would be wonderful. Gardens.
Nice
gardens. Villages. We will talk about villages, following the moon village, and about gardens, following the Howard Bloom greening the solar system concept.
Gardens, your reply. Alicia.
If we're allowed to go off script, ecosystems, because of the interdependency that's innate to this work.
Okay. Next, Michelle.
Again, off script, I say communities, human communities, off world.
Okay, nice. And how about you, Madhu?
NASA had a term many years ago. They used to call it outpost in the beginning. Okay. And then it develops into whatever else, including settlements. What I wanted to mention is that when we wrote our book on the moon, they were adamant we should take away the term colonization. So no colonization.
No colonization. I think we can agree on that. And I would like to conclude this session on this. So thank you, Madhu. Thank you, Adriano. Thank you, Michelle and Alicia. And now we go to the next panel to learn about cosmic hazards and planetary defense. I turn the program over to Joseph Pelton, who is Dean Emeritus of the International Space University, and his excellent panel. Thank you again.
Hello? Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted. Go, Joe.
Okay. Well, we are on this panel going to be looking at cosmic hazards and also how to defend against them. When I did a handbook on cosmic hazards a few years back, people said, "Why are you so concerned? Has space hazards changed?" And the answer is no, space hazards haven't changed, but Earth has. In 1800, there were 800 million people on Earth. it was largely an agricultural and rural global society. Today, the world has changed. We have 10 times more people. We have close to 8 billion people on the planet, 54% urbanized, and highly dependent on electrical grids, communications, and networks, and so on. And they are highly vulnerable to cosmic hazards, as we'll be learning in the panel today from our excellent panelists. We have today with us James Green, an old friend from the International Space University, who is an expert on solar storms. We have Bill Ayler from Aerospace Corporation, who is a world expert on cosmic hazards, and particularly asteroids and comets. And last but not least, we have Olga Sokolova from Zurich, Switzerland, joining us and telling us about how we might deal